What makes a game comfortable? What makes it fun? And what's important in the changing landscape of our gaming sphere? And, most importantly, why am I talking about the 90s when I didn't exist for most of them? Cozy games. Horror games. Cozy horror games? In the year 2020, one or two things happened that made life go a bit strange. I, an avid Animal Crossing fan, distinctly remember saying, oh boy, I wish there was a way I could just stay home instead of going to work so I could play the new Animal Crossing game for a few weeks. Sorry, Al, my bee. But more seriously, a very strange series of events occurred as a whole bunch of people were sent home and told to stay there without much to do. First, right when everyone was being sent home, Animal Crossing New Horizon, the next installment in a fairly successful line of wander around and do cute stuff without sticking too hard to any main plot games, released. So was Doom Eternal, which made for some adorably hilarious crossover art. Next, streaming online absolutely took off as a side hustle for people who just lost major sources of income in some cases, and just as a way to connect or kill time with people. Additionally, TikTok influence took off as well, with a whopping 180% growth in the 18 to 25-year-old demographic in the era of the first COVID spikes. New influence and gameplay pushed games that weren't as prevalent in the public eye, like Stardew Valley, Animal Crossing, other games further from the action genre, to a place visible to gaming marketing teams, suddenly revealing a criminally underrepresented niche. Thus, the cozy game took off. Games to aesthetically wrap yourself up in a blanket with a nice cup of tea and play, with cute animals and oftentimes a low level of main plot, focusing more on greater freedom of exploration, small form quests, and a sense of home rather than rapidly moving locations. These games were usually associated with comfort and safety. Now, because of the point of this video, I do want to make my stance on this market entry perfectly clear. I don't want to be misunderstood. I love this change. People, myself among them at times, who preferred this type of game were treated like utter dirt in the past, stereotyped, otherwise often rallied against by the gaming community at large out of fear that they would somehow take over and ruin everyone's favorite games. But the fact that we now have game studios catering to this niche in mass is incredible. However, as tends to happen when a well-deserving group gets an edge they sorely need, there's backlash against some of the old ways. See, action games, they're fairly neutral as far as games go, even if they've been the biggest player in the market for tons of gaming history. However, another niche of gaming history became relevant in recent times, seeing its biggest level of popularity in the 90s, which was the apparent opposite of all things in this new age: horror. Horror is a genre very near and dear to my heart, as many of you know, and the 90s that I totally participated and existed in no less were an absolute heyday for the genre in all forms of media out at the time. RPGs, movies, books, games, they were all in for the macabre, upsetting, and stressful. Darkness and the psychology thereof created seemingly endless content that became foundational to a lot of similar stories being generated today. However, on the surface, these games stand opposed to the very nature of what the stereotypical cozy game is: a game based on stress, dark topics, and usually oscillating between plot and a growing feeling of dread. Since action games are so popular that many games opted not to alienate themselves by rallying against them, horror, something that people remembered when it became popular, became an easy target to describe why cozy games are better. Common turns of phrase like, well, the world's scary enough already, we don't need to play games about it, or disdain for over-the-top or overly emotional 90s edge and a perceived romanticization of unhappiness started cropping up, all a growing pain from finally being acknowledged and feeling the need to keep the edge, as it were. I believe lovers of horror elicit a vision of people angry at the world, loving thoughts of evil or violence, yelling at their parents that it's not just a phase, Mom. But while I'm sure most of us were that person at some point, there is a modern brand of fans for cruel or stressful games that seem to defy reason, going hand in hand with our cozy gaming friends on the other side. These fans who beg the question, is it possible for a game to be comfortable, even in the horror genre? Spoiler alert if you read the title of this video, yes. Many of us grew up with horror. We knew what we like inside and out. And when scary ends up becoming less frightening, but a known quantity, the entire basis behind it changes. There are slow-paced moments in it that once you know and love, you can prep for the ending of which and actually become comfortable in the quieter times. Sometimes there's fast-paced horror interspersed in otherwise quiet media. Sometimes the fast-paced part is the entire bit of media. This and the quietness work for comfort for two different reasons. The quiet's obvious. It's calm, it's soothing. The fear needs to be juxtaposed with something to really ramp up the horror of the genre. And the frightening or stressful bits? Well, they go whole hog, enveloping every sense and making it impossible to pay attention to anything but them. Horror and non-horror do this well, for Pathologic's need for a sharp accounting of time, less the bodies in the river on Gorkon become piling up more than they do already, to Playdup's kitchen fire mega chaos that allows one slip to end an entire run. Brains are wilding, and stressing games can be comforting. I'm not talking about games that are like vaguely stressful at little bits, but the all-encompassing brain input that forces you to pay all of your attention in the game, blocking out external stressors or potential triggers for overstimulation. For some of us, these mediums elicit the same feeling feel-good chemicals as the comfy game feelings, and they're just as beloved as the chiller games to wrap up and enjoy for hours on end. As we age, we need to keep in mind that comfort and security can take many forms, and to not repeat the mistakes of generations before us and equate games and media we don't understand with cruelty or bad intentions. Let's look to the future together, creating an audience for all kinds of games so that none of us go unlistened to or underrepresented when new content is marketed. Please, I want more games like Graveyard Keeper. It is so cute. This ended up being a much more serious topic than I expected. Even if you don't like and subscribe, at least laugh a little bit. Pretend I made some hilarious bangers from time to time. And then like and subscribe, please. Anyway, have a bodacious day.